It seems like everywhere you turn these days, there's talk about some new tech right around the corner. And I feel like a lot of it lately is focused on robots coming to our homes,
Oh,
finally.
yeah, definitely. I've seen that too.
Like, are we actually getting close to that, beyond just some cool demos or like sci-fi stuff?
Right. It's a good question.
So for all of you listening who are just as curious as we are about what's really happening in home robotics, we've done a pretty deep dive
Yeah, a deep dive.
into a bunch of sources to really get to the bottom of it.
Well, we want to try to cut through all the hype and give you a clearer picture.
So to do that, we've been looking at this Global Smart Home Robotics Market Report 2025 edition, which gives us a really solid overview of the whole industry.
The big picture view. Yep.
Then to see what's actually out there, like right now, we've got this CNET review of a real humanoid robot you can buy today.
Oh, cool. A hands-on perspective.
And then we've also got this great video from AI Nexus on YouTube.
I've seen that channel. They break down all sorts of AI stuff.
Yeah, they do. And this one's all about different humanoid robots.
Perfect. It's good to see the specific examples.
Yeah. And what's really helpful is they actually talk about, how much these things cost, because
And that's the big question, isn't it? Like, what's it going to take to actually get one of these in your house?
So what we're trying to do with this deep dive is basically look at where smart home robotics is at right now.
Based on the market data and then grounded in what real robots can actually do and...
Of course, how much they cost, because that's a huge factor.
Absolutely.
So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
This market report, the Global Smart Home Robotics Market Report, it covers a pretty big time span, like 2021 to 2033.
Wow, it's a long view.
It is. And it uses 2024 as kind of like its base year, and then this year, 2025, is the estimated current state.
Okay, so trying to give a picture of where things are right now.
Exactly. So first off, when they talk about smart home robotics, what are they actually talking about?
Well, they're very specifically looking at robots that are meant to work inside your home.
Okay, so not like industrial robots or anything.
No, definitely not. This is all about home use, and they break it down into two main types based on how the robots move.
Gotcha. So like,
Stationary robots, which are fixed in place.
and then mobile robots that can move around.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. Like maybe the robot vacuum a lot of people have already would be mobile.
Exactly. That's a great example.
And then they also break things down by what these robots are actually meant to do, right? Like
Right.
what their purpose is.
Yeah, they've got these application categories.
So what are the main ones they're focused on?
The big three are care robots, social robots, and then this kind of catch-all category of others.
Care robots. So I'm thinking maybe something to help elderly people or people with disabilities.
You got it. Assistance with daily tasks, maybe monitoring their well-being, stuff like that.
And then social robots, I guess those are more for companionship or entertainment.
Right, maybe interacting with people, providing some company, things like that.
And then others. That could be a pretty wide range, huh?
Yeah, could be a lot of things.
Like security maybe, or even helping with some chores.
Potentially. Yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Okay, so we're starting to get a sense of how they're breaking down this whole market and what kind of robots they're talking about.
And then the report gets into some interesting numbers about where this whole thing is going.
Like how big is this market and how fast is it growing?
Yeah, exactly. So they project this compound annual growth rate, that's the CAGR, of, and I'm just going to say XX% here because it's in the paid version of the report.
Okay, makes sense.
But XX% from 2025 all the way to 2033.
So what does that tell us? Like, what's the takeaway there?
Well, it means that they're expecting a pretty big increase, in the number and the different types of home robots available over the next few years.
So this is definitely not just like a small niche thing.
No, it seems like it's going to be a significant market.
Okay, and what about like the actual market size now?
Yeah, so in 2025, they estimate the market to be XX million.
6 million already.
Yep, that's their estimate for this year.
Wow. And it's just going to keep growing from there with that XX% growth rate.
That's what they're predicting.
So this is not just a small thing. This is like a pretty big deal.
It seems that way, yeah.
And they also look at different parts of the world, right?
Yeah, they have a regional breakdown.
So where are they seeing this growth happening?
Well, they cover North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, South America, and the Middle East and Africa.
So pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, it seems like a global trend.
And they also identify some of the key companies in this space, right?
They do. They have a whole list of competitors.
And I noticed some pretty familiar names on there.
Yeah, there's a mix of big tech companies and then some more specialized robotics companies.
Like who are we talking about specifically?
Well, you've got SoftBank, for example,
Okay.
And iRobot, they make the Roomba, which you probably know.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's Hanson Robotics. They make those super realistic robots.
Oh, yeah. I've seen those. They look almost human.
And then there's Intuition Robotics, Blue Frog Robotics, and even Amazon is in the mix.
Oh, wow. Amazon, they're already so big in the smart home space.
Yeah, with Alexa and all their devices.
So what other companies are they highlighting?
Well, there's ASUS. They make computers and stuff.
Right,
And
yeah.
Works. They make power tools and yard equipment.
Okay, so maybe they're getting into home robots for those kinds of tasks.
Possibly, yeah.
Who else is there?
Matronics. They make those automatic pool cleaners.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
Then there's 5 Elements Robotics, Ada Robot, iLife, and Robomo.
So a pretty diverse group of companies from all different parts of the tech world.
It seems like everyone's trying to get a piece of this pie.
It makes sense with that kind of growth potential.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that gives us a pretty good picture of the market itself, like how big it is, who the players are, all that.
The lay of the land.
But what's actually driving this growth? Like, what are the factors that are pushing this market forward?
Right, and are there any roadblocks, too?
Yeah, anything that can slow it down.
The report looks at both sides, the driving forces and the restraints.
So what are some of the things that are helping this market grow?
Well, one of the big ones is this trend of rapid urbanization, more and more people living in cities with a lot of connectivity.
That makes sense. Like more people in closer spaces, maybe more need for, I don't know, convenience or efficiency.
Possibly. And then, of course, you've got all the advances in technology itself, like AI and robotics are getting better and better.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And there's this increasing demand for automation, just in general, people wanting things to be more automated.
I can definitely see that. Like we already have self-driving cars and all that.
Exactly. And this desire for automation is also extending to the home. People want things to be more efficient, more energy saving.
Okay, so as smart homes become more and more common,
It seems like robots are just the next step.
like a natural progression, I guess.
Right. So those are some of the big drivers. What else is there?
What other factors are they highlighting?
Well, they also mention all the new smart buildings and the innovation and infrastructure. A lot of that incorporates robotics.
Oh, yeah, like buildings that can manage their own energy usage and stuff like that.
Exactly. And then there's also a lot of government support for robotics research and development.
Okay, so governments are investing in this too.
They are. And then you've got private companies investing as well, putting a lot of money into developing these technologies.
So there's a lot of money flowing into this field.
There is. And then there's the whole trend of AI being adopted in so many industries now.
Right, like it's not just robots, it's AI everywhere.
Exactly. And then another big factor is this convergence of robotics and the Internet of Things, or IoT.
IoT, that's all the connected devices, right?
Yeah, like your smart fridge, your thermostat, all talking to each other.
And now robots are going to be part of that network.
That's the idea. So all these devices can work together seamlessly.
Okay, that's a pretty powerful combination.
It is. And then there's also this shift towards using more eco-friendly materials.
Oh yeah, that's becoming more important everywhere.
And then, of course, the whole digitalization trend, with everything being controlled remotely.
So a lot of these robots are probably going to be controlled through apps or something like that.
Most likely, yeah.
Wow, so that's a pretty impressive list of factors pushing this market forward.
It is, but there are also some challenges, some things that could hold it back.
What are some of the main ones they highlight?
Well, a big one is just the cost. Like developing these robots and then actually buying them is expensive.
Especially for the really advanced ones, I imagine.
Yeah, and there's also a shortage of skilled workers in this field, people who can design, build, and maintain these complex machines.
Okay, so even if you have the money, finding people to actually work on them could be tough.
That's a potential issue, and then in some places you've got regulations that could slow things down, especially for the more advanced robots that might raise safety concerns.
Right, like if they're moving around your house or interacting with people, there's definitely a need for some rules.
Definitely. And then the report also mentions just the general complexity of operating and maintaining these robots. It's not always straightforward.
So for the average person, it might not be as simple as just plugging it in and letting it go.
Right. There might be some learning curve there.
And of course, the cost is a huge factor too, like you said.
For sure. Especially for the average consumer, these robots can be a significant investment.
So even though there's all this potential, there are some very real challenges to overcome.
Absolutely. But the report also points out the opportunities, the areas where there's a lot of room for growth.
So even with these challenges, they're still optimistic about the future of this market.
Yeah, they see a lot of potential, mainly driven by the same factors that are helping it grow now, like government support, investment, and the adoption of AI.
So those things are going to keep pushing it forward.
That's what they're predicting.
And they also mentioned some emerging trends, things that could shape the future of this market.
Yeah, they highlight this increasing integration of robotics and IoT, which we talked about.
All right, all those devices working together.
And they also mention advances in emission control technologies.
Emission control, is that more for outdoor robots, maybe?
It could be. Or maybe for robots that are doing tasks that might generate some emissions, like cleaning or maintenance.
Okay, interesting. So we've got a good understanding now of the market itself, like the big picture trends, the drivers, the challenges, all that.
The overall landscape.
But let's get into the actual robots themselves. What's out there that you can buy right now?
Let's see some real examples.
Exactly. So we've got this CNET article about the Unitree G1, which is a humanoid robot you can actually buy today.
Oh, cool. Let's hear about it.
So how much does this thing cost?
Well, both CNET and the AI Nexus video put it at around $16,000.
$16,000. Wow, that's not exactly pocket change.
No, definitely not. But what do you get for that kind of money?
Yeah. What can this thing actually do?
Well, it's about 4 feet tall, weighs about 80 pounds, and it's got 23 joint motors, so it's pretty articulated.
Okay, so it can move around pretty well.
Yeah, it's got an 8-core CPU too, so it's got some processing power.
A little brain in there.
And it's got a battery that lasts about 2 hours.
Not bad. I guess it depends on what it's doing.
And for sensing its environment, it's got this LiDAR sensor, which is like a 3D scanner.
Oh, wow. So it can really map out its surroundings.
And it's also got an Intel RealSense depth sensing camera, similar to what's in some smartphones.
So it can really see what's around it.
Yeah, pretty advanced stuff.
So what can it actually do with all that technology?
Yeah.
The CNN article mentioned a few things, right?
Yeah, they showed it doing some pretty cool stuff, like it can get up from the ground if it falls over.
Okay, that's good. Wouldn't want it to be stuck.
And it can walk and balance pretty well, even if you push it a little.
Oh, wow. So it's stable.
They even showed it twirling a baton like a cheerleader.
That's pretty impressive.
And it can do some basic manipulation tasks like flipping toast
Flipping toast, okay.
and cracking walnuts.
Cracking walnuts, that's pretty dexterous.
Yeah, it's got some fine motor skills.
So it sounds pretty capable. But CNET also mentioned that it might need to be manually programmed, like it doesn't come with a lot of built-in skills.
Right, so it's got all this potential, but you might need to teach it what to do.
So what does that mean for someone who actually buys this thing?
Well, it means they might need to use Unitree's SDK. That's their software development kit.
Okay, so you need some technical know-how to really get the most out of it.
Yeah, it seems like it's more geared towards tech enthusiasts or researchers, not really the average consumer.
So if you're just looking for a robot to do your chores, this one might not be it, at least not yet.
Unless you're really into programming and want to teach it yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's move on to something a little more affordable.
Yeah, let's look at that Amazon Astro.
The AI Nexus video highlighted this one, and it's a lot cheaper.
Oh yeah, a lot cheaper. AI Nexus says it's between $999 and $1,499.
That's still a chunk of change, but way more doable than 16 grand.
For sure, but it's important to know that Astro isn't really a full humanoid robot. It's more like a mobile device on wheels.
Okay, so it's not walking around on two legs.
No, it doesn't have legs or arms. It's more like a rolling screen with some smarts.
So what can it do then?
Well, it's basically Alexa on wheels, so it can do a lot of the things Alexa can do, but it can also move around your house.
Okay, so it can follow you around and stuff.
And it can be used for home monitoring, like a mobile security guard.
So it can keep an eye on things while you're away.
Exactly, and it can check on your pets and give you a live video feed.
So it's like a combination of a smart home hub and a security camera.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
And AI Nexus sees this as a good entry point for people who want to start integrating AI into their homes.
Especially if they're already using Alexa and all that.
Makes sense. It's like a natural extension of their existing setup.
Right, it's taking Alexa to the next level.
Okay, so we've seen a high-end humanoid and a more budget-friendly option. What else is out there?
Well, there's this robot called Love It that AI Nexus talked about.
Love it. What's that one all about?
This one's all about emotional connection. It's not really meant to do chores or anything like that.
Okay, so it's more of a companion.
Yeah, and it's priced around $3,000.
3,000, so kind of in between the other two.
So what Love It does is it basically tries to bond with people. It's got these really expressive eyes.
Oh yeah, I've seen pictures. It looks kind of cute.
It's designed to be endearing, and it can move around and recognize faces and respond to touch.
So it's like a pet almost, but a robotic one.
Kind of, yeah. It's meant to provide companionship and comfort, especially for people who might be lonely.
Like elderly folks or maybe kids who are feeling isolated.
Yeah, it's filling that need for connection.
Okay, so we've got robots for practical help, robots for companionship, What about something that can actually help around the house?
Well, AI Nexus also mentioned this robot called Eyeless, or the AIS robot.
Eyeless. Okay, what can
Oh,
you do?
this one's a little more versatile. It can do things like vacuuming, mopping, fetching items, and it's got facial recognition.
So it can actually do some chores.
Yeah, and it can also help people with mobility issues.
Okay, it's a little more practical.
And the price range for this one is pretty wide. AI Nexus says it could be anywhere from $2,000 to $30,000.
Wow, that's a big range. Why such a difference?
It probably depends on the specific model and features. Maybe some have more advanced capabilities or sensors.
So there's a version for different budgets and needs.
Exactly. But the overall idea is that Eyeless is meant to help with everyday tasks, like a robotic helper around the house.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about that really expensive one they showed, the one that's like a full-on butler?
Oh yeah, Isaac by Weave Robotics. That one's pretty impressive.
But it costs a fortune, right?
It does. AI Nexus said it's $59,000.
$59,000. Wow.
Or you can finance it for $13,085 a month.
Still a lot of money either way.
But this one's like the ultimate home assistant. It can fold laundry, tidy up, retrieve objects, water plants, even take care of your pets.
So it's like having a live-in maid or butler.
Exactly. It's all about convenience and efficiency, freeing up your time.
But obviously only for those who can afford it.
Right. It's a pretty niche market at that price point.
But it's cool to see what's possible, like what they're aiming for.
Absolutely.
And AI Nexus also showed a bunch of other humanoid robots, right?
Yeah, just briefly, like a quick overview of the different things being developed.
Can you give us a quick rundown of some of those?
Sure. They mentioned Pepper, which is often used in businesses for customer service.
Okay.
And then there's Sophia, which is more of a showcase for advanced AI.
Like a demonstration of how lifelike they can make them?
Exactly. And then there's Walker, which is kind of a high-end prototype for home and office assistants.
Okay, so something that can do a bit of everything.
Yeah. And then there's Kimi, which is a robotic bartender.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty specific niche.
It is. And then there's Fourier GR2, which is mainly used for research, especially for assistive technologies.
So helping people with disabilities and stuff.
Exactly. And then there's Figure, which is working on a general purpose robot.
Okay, so something that could do a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's the goal. And then there's Amika, which is another really lifelike robot meant for social interaction.
Okay, so kind of like Sophia, but maybe with different capabilities.
Possibly. And then there's Tesla's Optimus project, which is aiming to create a more affordable humanoid robot.
That's Elon Musk's company, right?
Yeah, and they're initially focusing on factory work, but they have plans for home use eventually.
So maybe a more mass market robot at some point.
That's the idea. And then Unitree also has this H1 robot, which is supposed to be even faster and more capable than their G1.
Okay, so they're constantly improving their designs.
Yeah, and then there's Digit by Agility Robotics, which is specifically designed to carry packages.
Oh, wow, so like a delivery robot.
Exactly. It's bipedal, so it can walk on two legs like a human.
Wow, so it can go upstairs and stuff.
That's the idea. It's meant to navigate human environments.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. So as you can see, there's a lot happening in this field, a lot of different robots being developed.
Yeah, a lot of different approaches and specializations.
And it's important to remember that a lot of these are still in development. They're not available to buy yet.
Right, especially the more advanced ones.
Yeah, we're still a ways off from having Rosie the robot from the Jetsons.
But it's definitely exciting to see where things are headed.
Absolutely. The progress is pretty remarkable.
So to wrap up this deep dive, it seems pretty clear that the smart home robotics market is about to explode.
Yeah, the report definitely points to that.
All those factors we talked about, the urbanization, the advances in AI, the demand for automation, it's all coming together.
And we're starting to see real robots that can do real things, even if they're not perfect yet.
Right, and we've got a range of options now, from high-end humanoids to more affordable assistants.
And even robots focused on emotional connection.
So it's not just about practicality, it's about improving different aspects of our lives.
Exactly. There's a lot of potential here.
And the key takeaway for you, our listener, is that this is just the beginning. Things are moving fast.
Yeah, the next few years are going to be really interesting for this market.
And who knows, maybe one day we will have those robots from the Jetsons doing our chores and keeping us company.
Maybe sooner than we think.
But for now, it's fun to imagine the possibilities, right? So here's something to think about as you go about your day. What would your ideal home robot be like?
What would it do for you?
And how much would you be willing to pay for it?
That's a good question to ponder.
Because this technology is coming, whether we're ready for it or not.
That's for sure.
So it's worth starting to think about what role we want robots to play in our lives,
Absolutely.
and how we can make sure they're used for good.
That's the most important thing.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been fun exploring this topic with you.
Yeah, always fascinating to see what the future holds.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of tech.